Jim Parsons seemed to have everything most actors only dream about. He starred in the biggest sitcom on American television. He won 4 Emmy Awards, a Golden Globe, and became the highest-paid actor on TV for 4 years in a row. From the outside, his life looked perfect. But at 53, Jim admitted something that shocked even his biggest fans. He says that during many of those years, he wasn't simply stressed or exhausted. He was miserable. Not for a few weeks. Not during one difficult season. For years. He even says there isn't any amount of money that could convince him to live that way again. So what was really happening behind the scenes? The answer begins long before anyone had ever heard the name Sheldon Cooper. In the summer of 2026, Jim sat down for one of his most honest interviews ever. Looking back at the biggest moments of his career, he realized something painful. While everyone else believed he was living the dream, he was constantly trapped inside his own mind. Every day felt like balancing dozens of spinning plates. If even one slipped, he believed everything he had built would come crashing down. To everyone around him, that looked like dedication. It looked like discipline. But Jim now sees it differently. He calls it an obsession with control, driven by the fear that good things could disappear at any second. But where did that fear come from? The answer reaches much further back than television fame. During that conversation, Jim also spoke openly about another struggle. Even after filming hundreds of episodes across 12 seasons, he never stopped feeling terrified before each scene. He was convinced he might forget his lines at any moment. Viewers saw a calm, confident performer. Inside, he felt like the most nervous person on the set. That constant anxiety followed him everywhere. Even when cameras stopped rolling, his mind refused to rest. Instead of enjoying time with family and friends, he found himself worrying about the next mistake, the next risk, the next thing that could go wrong. But why did success never make those fears disappear? To understand that, you have to go back to 2001. Long before the Big Bang Theory. Long before the awards. Long before the fame. That was the year Jim's entire relationship with life changed forever. On April 29, 2001, Jim's father, Milton Parsons, died in a car accident. He was only 52 years old. Jim was 28 and still struggling to build an acting career. His father never lived to see any of the success that would eventually come. He never watched his son win Emmys. He never saw Sheldon Cooper become one of television's most famous characters. Years later, Jim appeared on Hollywood Medium and was told that nothing could have changed the outcome of the accident. While that brought some comfort, it couldn't erase one powerful thought that had taken root inside him. Time suddenly felt fragile. Every year mattered. Every birthday became a reminder. And eventually, that thought changed everything. By 2018, The Big Bang Theory was still one of the biggest shows in the world. Jim was 46 years old. Then one day, a number hit him harder than he expected. He realized he was exactly 6 years younger than his father had been when he died. That simple calculation led to one life-changing question. If someone told him he only had 6 years left, would he spend another one playing Sheldon Cooper? His answer surprised even him. It was no. Not because he hated the role. Not because he wanted more money or a bigger challenge. He simply wanted to discover what else life could offer before his own time ran out. But that decision would leave people closest to him completely stunned. Jim first shared his plans with producers Chuck Lorre and Steve Molaro. His castmates didn't hear it from him. When the news finally reached them, emotions ran high. Kaylee Cuoco later admitted she could barely breathe after hearing he wanted to leave. Johnny Galecki said he wasn't upset about the decision itself. He was hurt by how suddenly it happened. After 12 years together, the cast felt like family. But Jim had reached a point where staying felt impossible. His father's story had ended without warning. Jim wanted the chance to choose how his own next chapter would begin. Yet leaving one chapter behind didn't protect him from future heartbreak. In fact, another painful loss was waiting just a few years later. In 2025, Jim joined the Hulu comedy Mid-Century Modern alongside Nathan Lane, Matt Bomer, and the legendary Linda Lavin. Everyone who worked with her described her as warm, funny and deeply loved. Then tragedy struck. In December 2024, with only a few episodes left to film, Linda died after a rapidly progressing lung cancer diagnosis. The cast barely had time to process what had happened. The writers faced an impossible choice. Should they replace her character? Quietly remove her? Or face the loss directly? Linda herself had already given them the answer. Before her death, she reportedly told the writers not to avoid the truth if something happened to her. So they honored her wishes. They wrote her real passing into the story. Even more emotional, they recreated one of her final real-life moments. On the drive to the hospital, Linda had held her husband's hand and told him she loved him in case it was the last chance she had. Those exact emotions became part of the script. Jim found himself acting through scenes of grief that were barely fiction anymore. He wasn't pretending to mourn. He was mourning for real. And sadly, it wasn't the first time he had been forced to keep working while carrying enormous pain inside. During the final season of The Big Bang Theory, another heartbreaking moment unfolded. One of Jim's beloved dogs became seriously ill. Together with his husband Todd Spiewak, he made the painful decision to let their pet pass away peacefully at home rather than risk him dying alone while Jim was at work. Only days later, Jim suffered an injury while performing on stage. Looking back, he describes that period as one of the darkest stretches of his life. He says it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into something frightening. Meanwhile, millions of viewers continued laughing every week, completely unaware of the emotional weight he was carrying behind every performance. But this wasn't the first time Jim had hidden pain behind a smile. Long before Hollywood knew his name, Jim had become an expert at hiding a different part of himself. Growing up in Texas, he loved acting from an early age. School plays became his favorite place to escape. Yet at one point he almost gave up on the dream entirely, believing acting wasn't a sensible career. He even considered returning to finish a business degree instead. Fortunately, encouragement from friends and from Todd Spiewak convinced him to keep going. Together they eventually moved to Los Angeles, where Jim continued studying acting and earned a master's degree in classical theater. Everything seemed to be moving forward. But privately, another fear followed him everywhere. For years, Jim was terrified that people would discover he was gay. That fear stayed with him well into adulthood. Even after moving to New York to pursue acting, he avoided neighborhoods known for being welcoming to the LGBTQ+ community. Simply seeing a pride parade made him nervous because he knew how many people still held hateful views. He chose invisibility over attention. He and Todd stayed together for around 10 years before Jim publicly came out. He worried it could destroy everything he had worked for. At the time, openly gay leading men on major network sitcoms were still uncommon. He feared losing opportunities, fans, and perhaps even the show itself. But what happened next surprised him. Instead of damaging his career, honesty gave him strength. Jim has often said that becoming part of a community that still faces prejudice helped him discover confidence he never expected. Years before same-sex marriage became legal everywhere, he and Todd were already being recognized as an inspiring couple. Jim never saw himself as making a political statement. To him, their relationship was simply ordinary love between two people building a life together. The couple eventually married in 2017 after around 15 years together. Their daily life, Jim says, is wonderfully normal. But even with happiness at home, one lesson continued shaping every decision he made. Time never stopped feeling precious. Whenever Jim speaks about his career now, the conversation always returns to the same idea. Time matters more than success. Looking back, he says the version of himself who spent years constantly worrying isn't someone he wants to become again. He appreciates everything those years gave him, but he wouldn't repeat them for any price. That may sound surprising coming from someone who achieved almost every award an actor could hope for. Yet success didn't arrive easily. Before The Big Bang Theory, Jim auditioned for around 30 television pilots that never became successful series. He even auditioned for the American version of The Office and privately believed the concept would never work. History proved him spectacularly wrong. Then came Sheldon Cooper. From the very first audition, Jim felt an instant connection to the character. He even skipped a party the night before so he could continue rehearsing. His performance impressed producer Chuck Lorre so much that Lorre reportedly asked him back for another audition just to make sure it wasn't beginner's luck. It wasn't. That single role transformed Jim's life forever. Ironically, the actor who became television's most famous scientist had actually struggled with science at school himself. Later, he helped develop young Sheldon after conversations with Todd about Jim's unusually bright nephew inspired the original idea. Between 2015 and 2018, Forbes named him America's highest-paid television actor. Yet even after all that success, he still saw himself as someone happiest in front of the camera rather than behind it. So what finally changed inside him? Today, Jim says he no longer feels driven by the need to prove anything. He chooses projects because they bring him joy, not because they make him look successful. At this year's Tony Awards, he admitted something surprisingly relatable. He sometimes worries fans who remember Sheldon Cooper will be disappointed by how much older he looks now. He first played Sheldon at 34. Today he is 53, already 1 year older than his father ever became. When someone pointed that out during an interview, Jim quietly replied that he considers this bonus time. Those two words reveal almost everything about how he now sees life. In a strange twist, around the same time that deeply personal interviews spread across the internet, a fake story claiming Jim had died went viral. Millions of people believed it before his representatives confirmed he was alive. While strangers mourned a man who wasn't gone, Jim was telling the world something much more meaningful. Life is limited. Nobody knows how much time remains. That's exactly why he refuses to return for another Big Bang Theory revival, no matter how tempting the offer might be. Even today, before every performance, he still battles the familiar fear of forgetting his lines. Some anxieties never disappear completely. The difference is that they no longer control his life. For years, Jim Parsons measured every day against an invisible countdown that began the day he lost his father. Fame couldn't silence it. Awards couldn't erase it. Money couldn't outrun it. Only acceptance finally did. He stopped treating success like something that could vanish at any moment and started seeing time itself as the real gift. In the end, the biggest story was never about television, awards, or celebrity. It was about one man learning that surviving isn't the same as truly living. And maybe that's the question his story quietly leaves behind. If you knew exactly how much time you had left, would you keep living the life you're living today, or would you finally choose something different?